But to be a winning trial lawyer, I really think you need three things. First thing you need is the evidence, right? Didn't PARRIS say, I don't care how good you are? Or Sean Claggett was saying that the other day. My mistake. The older version of Cal. Once you get another 15 years, another 60 pounds, that'll be more of a Claggett type speed. But the evidence, you've got to have the evidence. And most of you know how to get the evidence. You spent your whole life litigating, doing depositions, doing interrogatories, request to admit, request to produce, getting the evidence. That's step one. Everybody starts there. I never started there because I never worked in a civil litigation firm, so I have no idea how to get the evidence. But I do know what it is once I see it, though. But the next piece of it would be trial strategy. Where do you learn trial strategy from? The reality is that Cal got a little bit of a head start from the rest of us because nobody else had a great trial lawyer to hang out with from the time we were 1 year old and constantly listening, constantly being exposed. But so that's trial strategy comes from conferences like this, comes from reading books, comes from watching case analysis, comes from, that's why it's great when you have a great case. If you're not a world-class trial lawyer right now, you should get one to join you because they're going to help a lot besides money, but trial strategy. Because you've got all this evidence, let's say 100 pieces of evidence after you're done with litigation, but you got to figure out which 20 does the jury need to see? And what order do you sequence that 20 in so it actually has a maximum impact to get the story you want? That's trial strategy. I know a little bit about that only from watching a lot of trials, and but most of my trials were criminal defense trials, except for maybe 10 of them. So that is not what I considered myself to be my strength. But the last one, I should really say trial presentation, because that would make it clear. Trial presentation, practicing the physical skills of trial, which and there's a lot of them to practice. And so where do we start? Oh, it's supposed to come up one at a time. Well, I guess that might have been an old board or something. Oh, that's what the problem is. You rebuilt this for me, and they came up one at a time, and then I didn't have that one, and I'm sorry. Well, anyways, it doesn't matter. There's one more on there that says, I'll just go through them one at a time. Eye contact. That is something to practice because let's just say, just for purposes of having a reasonable space here, hey, workman, what are you doing on your phone? But you don't take a picture. It's all being recorded, and what's his name is at home. Ray Asher taking the most incredible notes you ever saw. Didn't you get them delivered to you today? Don't be an ingrate, man. Anyways, just joking. Point taken. Anyway, so let's just say, just for purposes of being able to have a reasonable jury, these first 3 rows will be the jury, okay? So we talk about eye contact. What's a micro glance? It's kind of like good morning, everybody. It's really taking the time to look at every single person's eyes just for a moment, as opposed to what most people would be like, good morning, everybody. And they just don't connect with anybody, so they just scan over the entire group. Does everybody understand the difference between the two? I was able to see the difference. I mean, it's a small difference, and I don't know if you can see it or not, but that's what I mean by it. Connecting. So when you're talking to somebody, it's so important that before you do, you connect in their eyes, and when you're done, you pause for a moment. It's almost like a disconnect, reconnect, move on, and start from there. So it's like a disconnect, reconnect. But also part of that, would be the hand, let's get out of line, the hand gestures. Because I just kind of recognized this just a little while ago, that the further away you are from somebody, like the distance I am from Doug, if my hand isn't up and kind of connecting with you, it's harder for us to stay connected to each other. It's even harder for my eyes to stay connected because you're so far away. But when my arm is out at about this angle and my hand's at a relaxed angle, about a 45 degrees, not like this, because if I'm talking, people put their hands like this is like a begging mode, right? Give me, help me, or it's like what the F mode. But it's one of the two. And if your hand's like this, as you're talking to somebody, and people's hands are often like this, it's like, it doesn't matter how nice I'm being, unconsciously, it's like, you're in trouble with me. And if my hand's like this, no matter what I'm saying, unconsciously I'm saying, sit down, shut up, I got this. Just back, sit down, quiet. That's why, like this, so it's almost like constantly, come with me, come with me, come with me. And so when you you get comfortable and you practice, and your hand can start to move at the pace of your voice. I think it does a lot because it creates like a little distractor to draw the attention, the peripheral, because it's a moving item, right? So of course it's going to draw the attraction of the human eye. And so it constantly keeps the person you're connected to, I think, more engaged with you, but also the people that are around, even though you're not looking at any of them, you're just looking at one person, it still draws the attention of other people towards your face. So that's what we mean by, the hand gesture. But that's just one of the hand gestures. So, or like a hand gesture like, as we've all just heard, my name is Dan Ambrose. And I don't know how many of us have ever had the experience, but as I'm talking about coordinating the hand gestures with everything you say. And so it's, I don't know how many of us, it's like, come with me, and your eyes kind of move with your hand as you micro-connect with people. Does that kind of make sense to everybody on the different hand gesticulations? I hope. Like chunking versus an individual. So if I say, good morning, everybody, that's clearly a group move, right? Because it's everybody. But an individual would be, I don't know how many of us have ever had the experience. So when I say to Tom, that's one connection. And I say, I don't know how many of us, those are a bunch of micro connections. Then to Mark, have ever had the experience? So that's an individual connection. So to understand the difference between large groups and small individual connections. And with human behavior, I think it's very important that we ramp up the contact. That when people, first meet somebody, if you first meet somebody, they just stare at you for a minute, that's so weird. Or they get almost too interested. And, and some lawyers do that, and they're effective. A friend of mine was telling me he tried a case with a very well-known lawyer, and he left before the verdict came in, but, talking to the jurors afterwards, someone said they got uncomfortable with the amount of eye contact that the person was having with the jury. And I could see that, and so it's just something to be cognizant of. The pacing of your speech, that's another thing to be cognizant of. As Rex was saying, like when you, especially under the tension of presenting, that often causes people to speed up. And that makes it harder. You're increasing the cognitive load or the amount of bandwidth you're taking up, as Cal would say, because you're forcing somebody to process so much information fast instead of giving them breaks. Like an example would be because can you imagine if you knew one of the witnesses, or perhaps you were even friends, with one of the parties, or even one of the lawyers. But all those pauses allow the mind to process it, as opposed to, I said, because can you imagine if you knew one of the witnesses? Or perhaps you were even friends with one of the parties? Because I hope everybody can see the kind of difference between the two when you don't pause. Because every time you pause, it draws the listener in a little further, and it gives their minds time to process the information you just shared with them. Well, word choice goes without saying. Cal was talking about it earlier. Things like as small as as we've all just heard, instead of as you've all just heard. Just one of those little changes of words make a difference. And that's why it's important to write out your materials before you do it to make sure you've got your best word choices. And there's a reason why you're choosing them. Listening, of course, which is often people have trouble with that, but that's really just somebody's talking, making sure you're not looking away, you're locked in like they're the last person on earth. Glance control. So where you want the jury to look, you have to look. For example, if I want the jury to look at my hallway, if I'm like this, and I'm talking about, hey, it's down in room number 10, nobody's really looking at room 10 because it's natural to look in my eyes. And all the time you see, really great lawyers too, using PowerPoints, and they're just like this. And that's what they're talking to the jury, and it's got stuff on it, and the jury's kind of going back and forth, and it's just, I think it's quite distracting for them because you're not helping them to focus to where you want them to look. Or, for example, if I say, can you imagine if you were friends with one of the parties? Because everybody's going to look over there. But I say, can you imagine if you were friends with one of the parties? Nobody's going to be looking over at the party because I'm still maintaining the eye contact with the audience. So it's about getting them to look where you want them to look. And of course, emotional control, that's because we all know emotions are contagious, right? So if I say, good morning, everybody, without any warmth, well, that would be kind of weird, right? We normally say good morning, and there's some warmth in your face. And then the last one that's not on there because unfortunately I've got the wrong PowerPoint, but it's creating space or creating an illusion. So there'd be plenty of examples of that. And I give these little examples because they're part of like to train these skills. I actually used this past criminal case that I had because, I don't know, it just seemed to work. For some reason I kept some documents and police reports for like 8 years after I left Michigan. I just had them. I was just like, it's the reason this stuff is still here. But creating space is creating an illusion. For example, be like, about 10 minutes later, Deputy Dennis pulls up, he gets out of his car, comes into the salon, and walks up to Anthony and asks him what happened. So, of course, the illusion of a car pulling up, a door opening, somebody walking in, then walking up. That's what I mean by creating space. Or, I'm going to demonstrate some things right now, and then you'll see the different pieces of what we're talking about in the demonstrations. Because I believe that, let me see, I think I have this thing in my pocket here, whoops. So the way that I have determined to train this stuff is by having scripts. So I have voir dire scripts that are written out and specific, and every word is important. And, because I do a fair amount of consulting with other people, other lawyers, and so many lawyers have trouble getting out of the box, getting that initial connection. Because in that first 3, 4, 5 minutes, the jury's making a lot of decisions about you, whether they like you, whether you care, whether they could trust you, whether you're one of them or you're, hoity-toity and all that other kind of stuff. And so these, I call them rapport scripts. That's what they're designed to do. And everybody's got their own way, and whatever, obviously whatever way is working for you, works for you. But, so I'm just going to demonstrate one chunk at a time and then kind of explain the rhetoric behind it. What do you think about that, Hoyt? Fair enough. Hoyt and Alex, and Aaron, no, which was Aaron, that's great. They were nice enough to move up to the front from all the way in the back, so I appreciate that. So now I have more of a full jury box here. Thank you. So it goes like this. So again, I'm just going to make the first couple of rows jurors because it makes my life easier. So, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you. And as we've all just heard, my name is Dan Ambrose. And I don't know how many of us have ever had the experience of meeting a whole bunch of new people, all at the same time. Sort of perhaps maybe we're at a party or something. But if you happen to be anything like me and you weren't blessed with a photographic memory, then you may, on occasion, forget somebody's name. Have we all done this? Okay, well, I'm going to do my very best to remember all of yours. And I even have this sheet of paper over here to help me. But if I do happen to make a mistake and call you by the wrong name, will everybody here feel comfortable saying, hey, Dan, my name's X and not Y? Would you all be willing to do me this favor? Okay, thanks. So just a quick explanation of that piece right there. So obviously starts out with, good morning, everybody. But you wouldn't believe how much trouble some people have doing this. Like they put their hands up like this, or they have no smile on their face, or they stare at one person when they say everybody. So again, something to practice. Muscle make good morning, everybody, and relax and connect with everybody in the eyes. I say, so I say to Tom, that kind of gives me an initial connection with Tom. And as we've all just heard, I kind of swoop my hand towards me. My name is Dan Ambrose. So it's just a quick reintroduction. And then I was like, I don't know how many of us. So now my face is one of kind of dis-ease and discomfort, because just a slight, because I believe that most people, when they get on that jury box, especially then, they're tense, they're nervous. And I say this because I got to be on a jury like 3 or 4 months ago. I was sitting in a jury box in downtown LA, and then it was an employment case. I knew there was no way in God's green earth I was ever going to be on that trial, but I was so anxious sitting there, like my neck was in knots. I couldn't figure out why, except the fact that everybody around me was stressed and tense, including the lawyers in front of me. So I'm like, these emotions are contagious. So, if I say, no, have you ever had experience meeting a whole bunch of new people all at the same time? Well, that's the experience they just had, right? They just met a whole bunch of new people called their fellow jurors. And But I believe to get rapport with somebody, you have to kind of meet them where they're at. Because if a lawyer gets up there and says, good morning, everybody. Is everybody so happy to be here? To me, that's quite a disconnect because most people aren't that happy to be there. And so, see, but then after that, the next line is, but, like, a whole bunch of people at the same time, sort of like maybe we were at a party or something. So just a slight warmer face and the hand, pulling us closer together to like a little nudge out of the the tense space. That's the next part is, then you may on occasion forget somebody's name. I mean, have we all done this? Of course, did I follow that right? But if you're anything like me and you weren't born with a photographic memory, obviously I wasn't because I just forgot my shit. But anyways, you weren't born with a photographic memory, but of course that's a join the tribe move. None of them were born with a photographic memory either, right? Then you may, on occasion, forget somebody's name. And yet look is like kind of mea culpa. I mean, I drop the hand, reset, neutral. I mean, have we all done this? And kind of look around. And of course, everybody's going to give a yes, set, nod, right? And then, the inverse is, but I'm going to do my very best. So it's one hand gesture in to remember all of yours. And kind of like a blooming flower and connect with everybody. And, I got this piece of paper up here, which I looked down at because I want the jury to look down at and to help me. And I gesture in. But if I do happen to make a mistake, so now it's really a mea culpa look. And it's to one individual juror and call you by the wrong name. I mean, will everybody here feel comfortable saying, hey, Dan? So my face is warmer now. Like, this isn't a big deal. Everybody makes mistakes. Hey, Dan, my gesture out. My name is X and not Y. Oh, you can call me by my first name because we're casual, we're friends. Then drop hands, reset. Give time for people to pause so they can answer that question in their mind. And I said, would you all be willing to do me this favor? And with a warm face, because first of all, when you ask somebody to do you a favor, it's usually with a warm face. Somebody says, Layla, I need you to do me a favor. You're thinking, who we putting the hit on, right? It's like gangster. But, he asked me to do you a favor, it has a warm face. And then, and Ben Franklin said, if you want to get somebody on your side, you have to ask them to do you a favor. And if they do, then they owe you. You don't owe them. So that's just like the first little quick, takes maybe 45 seconds. So anybody have any questions about that? But like by doing these scripts, and practice them, you learn the hand gesticulations. All the different hand gesticulations, so there's a pattern for learning them. It's not just random. That's why it's like, if everybody just did their own thing, there would be no patterns developed. Does that make sense to everybody? Hey, Cal, what are you doing back there? Well, Cal, you should come up here and comment on my stuff, since your dad clearly is not going to, so that way you could, Rex, you're supposed to come up here and tell me where I'm wrong and what I'm not doing correctly, because I got to get better. But,
Do we need to start there?
huh?
Do we need to start there?
No, but it's like, no, because I'm trying to, it's like I said to Rex. I said, Rex, I'm trying to figure everything out. And so as I'm trying to figure it out, if you give me your input, I might figure it out faster because, I have all this time to do all this teaching. I know he doesn't owe me a favor. Rex, he's so funny.
You got it figured out. I'm impressed. You got it figured out better than I do, in many respects. You really do. You could be a little smoother. You could practice it more.
I'm practicing.
Huh?
I'm practicing.
I know.
I'm practicing every month for at least 3 to 6 days a month. I'm practicing.
I think the art to this is how subtle you are. And I think where I failed all the time was I would be too, or like my wife said, I'd put it up here, or I'd be too focused on it. The goal is to connect. And we're connected, aren't we? It was subtle, and it's in the soft eyes when you do it. It's. And that was always hard for me because I grew up in an environment where I was supposed to be hard. I was supposed to be an asshole, For whatever reason, that somehow got into my head. And it's taken me 50 years to drive it out. And it's still there. It's still there. I always thought that softness in me was a character flaw, you know, that it meant I was weak, I guess, you know. And when I finally figured out that wasn't the case, you know, and that I should be really cultivating, you know. I mean, I love people. I really do. I want what's best for people. And for what, how that got into my head that it was a weakness, you know. So if I had anything to offer you, it would be softer. You know, you're a little too loud, right?
Well, I have an amplifier.
Look, if you're going to ask me for a critique,
I know.
you can't defend. Just accept what you like and throw away the rest.
Thank you for sharing, Rex.
Huh?
Fair enough.
Thank you for sharing, Rex. I'll let you know.
It's hard. It's hard to stand up here and have somebody critique you. You know, really difficult. But it is how we get better, you know. But I am incredibly impressed. I mean, you got it down. You got it down. I think if you're asking me to critique the teaching of it, is I wish we could have an environment where, okay, let's stand up and practice this now, you know? Because if you don't stand up and practice, okay, I mean it, pair off. Everybody practice one of these things, just one, for about 3 minutes. Can we do that? No, you got to do that because I'm the boss.
I don't know how we would do that, Rex.
They just stand up, pick somebody, and let's do this. Let's you and I do it.
All right, we'll model. Let's see what's...
So what did you think of the show? What did you think of the program? You know, just this one little gesture with soft eyes, okay?
I thought it was really great. I personally, except for a few clerical errors of overestimating food and beverages, I was very happy with it.
What do you mean overestimating food and beverages?
Well, you know, when you buy lunch for 175 people and 140 show up, you think, wow, that was 35 people that money just disappeared into the atmosphere. You know, because I never claimed to be.
Oh, you're in the rear view mirror. Right?
No, oh, because I'm looking at the past. No, but that was a learning process. So, you know, this is all a learning process too, because it's the first time I've ever done, obviously, an event like this at more of a resort type venue on a smaller scale, or like a medium scale. Small scale would be 50, medium scale's 200.
Okay, slow them down. Slow them down.
See? Because I remember when I got all excited about an idea one time recently, and I was talking to you about it, and he said, Dan, you have to slow down. You're losing credibility by speaking too rapidly. And, you know, speaking slowly and teaching yourself to speak slowly, especially under pressure, that's a skill.
It is, isn't it?
It
See the
is a
difference?
skill.
There was a real difference there, wasn't there? Remember the voice message they played earlier today? You know, from the adjuster? How many noticed how fast she was talking? You know? The jury doesn't have to hear it, to hear the words. It said it all in the way she was talking. Oh shit, did we screw up here? Yeah. And I was thinking that, you know, I really got to start training our people on those critical phone conversations to write it out first. You know, write out the keywords. Practice it once or twice, and then maybe do it. Because we do have those critical conversations, don't we? Not often, not a lot, but she knew there was $50 million on the line in that call, you know? We have those conversations, and when we do, when we're in that situation, that's when you slow to a crawl, you know? And then you can pace it up after you practice it a couple times. That's already better. But damn, I'm going to steal your slide. You got it all down. But it just has to be natural. And that's such a stupid way to say it. You know, I do it at home all the time with Carol, and she doesn't hesitate to say, "No, you look like a creep." Not that bad. Okay, she's not that bad, but she has permission. She has permission to improve it's because whether we like it or not, we're always on stage. We're always on stage. And it takes a while to get used to that. You're getting used to it.
I'm getting better.
What else you want to know?
Well, I was going to throw out a couple more pieces of what I was going to do, and then I was going to break.
Well, what I'd really like you to do is get people practicing something, because that's obviously something you're not comfortable with.
Well, reasonably comfortable, but in a minute. How about if I do it in a minute? I just want to,
Okay.
Because that way I just want to show the different techniques. And then we could practice something. Yes, Bouzard.
Dan, Rex made a great point. He wishes there was a place where people can go to practice this.
Tell us about that, Dan.
Is that what you do at your boot camps?
As a matter of fact, that is Mr. Bouzard. We practice for days sometimes. These three different aspects of, we spend one day on presentation skills, which is, using visual, just creating space, just telling a story, which I'm going to do in a moment. One day on voir dire, and then one day on cross. Yes, George.
So are they all just only 3 days?
That's George. These guys are so funny because we all went skiing together in Tahoe for a week. So we were supposed to be at Nick Rowley's mountain retreat, but that didn't quite work out. So we had to rent a house in Tahoe, which actually did work out really well because it was on the lake. And some people thought it was a good idea to go jump in the water. That's the coldest water in the world, though. I mean, I thought my heart was going to shut down. And you can touch the ground. It's only 4 feet deep, but you're you can't feel anything. It's the weirdest thing ever. But anyways, so the next chunk of the voir dire just goes like this. Now we need to ask you all some questions about your opinions, your beliefs, and your experiences, so that we can help all of you decide if this case will be the right case for you. I mean, will this be okay with everybody? Okay, because the reality is that not every case is right for every juror. And that's why we all go through this process called jury selection. And that's also why the judge read us all the list of potential witnesses, introduced all of us to the parties and to the lawyers. Because can you imagine if you knew one of the witnesses? Or perhaps maybe you were friends with one of the parties, or even one of the lawyers. I mean, can we all see how this could cause some potential bias? I mean, does everybody know what we mean when we say bias? Lee, how would you define bias? Belief system. Okay, so anyways, thanks, Lee. So let me just break that piece down for you right there. So I call this kind of explaining the process, because I think part of lowering the cognitive load of the jury is letting them know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So that way it's not a big surprise, right? So it's now so 2 hands in, we need to ask all of you some questions, and that's where you make a bunch of micro eye contacts about your opinions. So then it's connect, start talking, extend your arm. So it's your opinions, your beliefs, and your experiences. So opinions, beliefs, and experiences. I think it's called stepping. So beliefs are stronger than opinions, and experiences are stronger than beliefs and opinions. So that's why it's opinions, beliefs, and experiences. And why we do it? So that we, 2 hands in, so that we can help all of you decide if this case, and kind of look down and anchor it, and then connect in somebody's eyes, will be the right case for you.